we still, have the Fed raising rates. We still have very high oil prices. We still have now banks that are beginning to tighten lending standards. And so we're not even done with the tightening phase of the cycle. So you can't really begin to talk about the beginning of the recovery until that's over.
Hey everyone, how was your weekend? With the economy in such a precarious state, it's no wonder everyone is feeling anxious and stressed out. 401ks are taking a hit, crypto and stock have plummeted, and wages are not keeping up with inflation. Food and gas prices are also on the rise, which adds to the financial burden of many families. In this video, we're going to cover Chamath Palihapitiya as he talks about what sort of recession is going to hit the market, and what is the determinant for that. So stay tuned till the end of the video to not miss out on any update. And if you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to never miss out on any of my latest updates. You can also hit that bell icon to get notified of my videos. Now let's dive into it.
If you take a big step back to the day before the lockdowns started, we had a normal functioning economy that was growing by, call it, 2% a year. And the minute that we enforced these lockdowns, I actually think what we did was we started a supply-side recession. It's what Zach said earlier. So what does that mean? Let's just say you're a factory and you make wheels. Okay, just make something really simple. You were growing at 2% a year. Everything seemed hunky-dory. You had employees. It was fine. You used to sell your products, make 10, 15% profits. Everything was fine. And then the day after, the government said, you need to shut your factory down because we can't have people spending too much time close together because we need to get a handle on this pandemic. Okay, so you shut it down. And then for the next 12 or 18 months, what happens? That stuff sits idle. These people that used to work for you get $2.5 trillion put into their bank accounts. They spend their time doing other things. And then all of a sudden people say, okay, it's time to start the factory up again. People want to buy wheels. And now all of a sudden you find that because everything all around the world was shut down, there's no rubber to make the wheels. There's no steel to make the axle. There's no people to put them all together. And so what happens? Well, prices go up because, again, you gave everybody else $2.5 trillion. So they're like, well, I used to pay $1 for your wheel. I'm willing to pay you $2 now. Just make the wheel. Give it to me before you give it to somebody else. So that is like the classic definition of a supply-side recession. And the Fed basically confirmed this in the minutes that they just released today. Jason, can you just read the quote that you had in the notes?
Well, the one up top, a significant risk that elevated inflation should become entrenched if the public begins to question their resolve.
I think the point is that, we were kind of in a supply-side recession, and now by raising rates to some crazy amount, the end of which we're still not sure about, may actually then trigger the demand destruction to have a demand-side recession. And so I don't know that we have lived in a modern point in time where both things have been true. Right? There's been a principle of macroeconomics that everybody's always kind of debating, is this a supply side issue? Is it a demand side issue? We know that in COVID, it was a supply side issue. We took all the supply out of the market. And now we're trying to figure out when we exhaust, all of the money we've given people and we destroy demand and take the incentives for demand to go away, right? Consumer confidence is now starting to turn. What happens then? Well, we're going to figure that out in the next 6 or 9 months. But the thing is, you have both that are true. It's not as if the supply side of the economy has been fixed. It's not as if everybody is running at 100% capacity. It's not as if all the supply chain issues have been worked out.
Yep.
So I don't know. I just think it's a very complicated situation.
Chamath explains how the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a sudden and severe economic downturn, which has been dubbed a supply-side recession. This is due to the fact that businesses have been forced to shut down or reduce production due to the lockdowns, which has led to a decrease in the supply of goods and services. We are now in the midst of a supply chain recession, and one of the Fed's primary tools for fighting recessions is interest rates. The Federal Reserve expressed concern at its most recent meeting that tighter monetary policy may be needed if price growth exceeds expectations, according to minutes of the meeting released on Wednesday. It also showed policymakers supporting raising interest rates. However, by raising rates to some crazy amount, the Fed may trigger the demand destruction. Last week, Bill Ackman also tweeted a series of tweets where he stated that inflation is still a big problem, not the recession, as there are plenty of jobs. Now, Chamath seems to partly agree with it and partly not. Let's get into the next clip to see what he has to say on recession. But before that, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up.
I just don't see where all of a sudden there are these writ large mass layoffs. For example, I would believe what you're saying if the headline in the Wall Street Journal said Walmart lays off 10,000 people, right? That's not what's happening. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Walmart's like, well, we seem to have record demand. We're raising prices, and every supplier will have to pay a gas tax and a supplier tax and deal with it. So I just think that you're going to be right in the end. I just think we're way too early in this process to get to that place where we're debating this. I don't see.
So, Chamath, are you on board with the Ackman trade, basically? Ackman basically came out with that tweet storm a couple of days ago, basically saying that, listen, inflation is still the big problem, not recession. The economy is humming along. There's plenty of jobs. And we're going to have a persistent problem with inflation.
I think he's kind of right and kind of wrong. I think that you can have inflation and a recession at the same time. This is what my point is. I think we have been in a supply side recession, meaning the day of the pandemic, it's not as if demand stopped. It's not as if you and I, David, didn't want to go out or use DoorDash or take an Uber or watch a movie in a movie theater. We were not allowed. Right. And so we found other ways in order to fulfill our demand. That's why Shopify, did so well on behalf of the merchants that they served. That's why Robinhood did so well. That's why Fortnite did so well. Right. We found other places to spend money. But what went away was the supply. And those incentives didn't come back, and they're still not back. That's why prices keep going up. It's not the problem. It's just that most people don't understand that you can have a supply side recession and a demand side recession. They just manifest in different ways. So, well, I think, I guess Ackman is roughly right in some ways. He's roughly not so right in some others. I think that we have an issue where we are going to transfer the supply side issues that are driving inflation to average everyday consumers and their ability to buy things. I still think that the average everyday consumer's desire to buy things is what it was from before, and on the margin is probably higher. I do think at some point it will start to change when prices get high enough. But I don't think we've reached that point of equilibrium yet. And the reason is because companies like the Walmarts of the world, who see this demand on literally a real-time basis, knows better than anybody else when and how much they can raise prices downstream into their supply chain. So when you see something like this in the Wall Street Journal, I would just encourage us all to say, they must see that demand is the same or better. And so they're going to now push those price increases down to everybody else, because now Walmart says, here is an opportunity for me to defend my earnings power. And this is why I think we're in this first inning of this. So I don't know whether Ackman is right or wrong, but I think we're in the early phases of a two-phase recession. And I don't know what that looks like because I've never lived through one of those. And I think in many ways, it's the combination of the two.
So he believes that you can have inflation and recession both at the same time. According to him, there have not been any mass large-scale layoffs at major corporations. In his words, we're too early in the process. Well, as you guys can see, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to a sudden and sharp increase in demand for certain goods and services, while at the same time disrupting the supply of many of those same goods and services. Chamath explains that those incentives haven't come back yet, and this has resulted in a sharp increase in prices for many everyday items. Most people are familiar with the concept of a recession, but many don't realize that we can have two different types, demand side and supply side, at the same time. Chamath believes that we are in the early phase of a recession, which is a good combination of both. Do you agree with him? Are we really in the early phases of both demand and supply recession? Are mass layoffs just around the corner, or is it going to take some time for that? I would love to know your thoughts on this. That's it for today. For another amazing video, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Also, don't forget to leave a big thumbs up. I'll see you all in my next video. Adios.